So good. My name is Trish. I'm a trauma-informed life coach, and I'm here to help you live your best, most authentic life. We're going to help you transform one post at a time, and it's comments like this that are going to help us. Let's get into it. I need to do more studying of the ego. It holds so much negative connotations for me. I totally understand that. And I think it gets it from both ends. I think that the ego gets a bad rap in the traditional psychiatric way of talking about it, and also in the spiritual way of talking about it. But let me define it in the Trish Law way so that we have a little framework to work through. And then we're going to talk about the difference between intellectualism and actual emotional awareness, and why the ego is a really important thing to understand if you want to heal. Okay, what is the ego in Trish's way of saying it? The ego is your survival hardware. It is installed in your human suit. You get one because if you don't have an ego, you will die, because the ego's main role in terms of our human experience is to keep us alive. And you know what? If you're watching this, your ego's done a hell of a job. The reason you're sitting here watching this video is because you have an ego. So hopefully that starts to at least pull at the fabric of the negative part of it. The ego's really a neutral thing. It's neither good or bad. It's just part of being human. And I think that's an important framework to start with. So what is the ego's real role? Its real job is to create safety and certainty for you by keeping you alive. So as a result of that main feature of the ego, which also keeps your heart beating, it keeps your digestive system going, all the things that are automated, including your breath, your ego is in charge of that. But until we become conscious, your ego is also in charge of managing all your emotions, right? Which, if we want to become awake, we should probably reclaim responsibility for that, right? So if you've seen the same pattern repeat more than 5 or 6 times in your life, and you had the same emotional experience every time you repeat the pattern, even though there might be different characters in it, it's because your ego's managing your emotions. It makes sense. The same way your ego's managing your breath. You don't have to think about your breathing, your ego just automates it. But if you and I can breathe differently and notice that we have a different physiological response when we reclaim responsibility for our breathing, we can do the same thing with our emotions, and that's how people heal, if that makes sense. So here's telltale ego stuff. Ego is not meant to make you happy. The ego's job is not meant to help you heal. The ego's job, its sole responsibility, is to keep you alive. Okay? So the ego is constantly scanning our environment for threats. It is not looking for what's right. It's not looking for, the intuitive parts of us. It's not looking for what the potential happy places we could be, or the places that we could grow or heal. Healing and growth are threatening to the ego because those things are very, very emotionally and or physically uncomfortable, which is exactly what the ego is trying to help you get as far away from as you can. The ego cannot hold paradox. It looks at things in a very black and white way. Things are either right or they're wrong. They're good or they're bad. They're black or they're white. The ego does not have the ability to hold paradox, which is unfortunately part of being a human. We are paradoxical beings. We are both light and dark. So we are right in the way that we are being. Our ego goes right against that because the ego can't hold two truths that conflict at the same time. That's why somebody that absolutely needs to be right is in their ego, because they can't hold the paradox. Somebody who has done work is much more ambivalent. They're able to see nuance, and you can tell if somebody's done their healing work because they are less black and white in their thinking, if that makes any sense. I think the ego gets a bad rap because in the traditional psychiatric models of, therapeutic models, the ego is looked at as, because it has that negativity bias, it's looked at as a negative component. I think it's also true in the spiritual community. That the ego is something that spiritual people have convinced themselves they can kill. You can't kill your ego. It's part of who you are. It's like trying to kill your spirit at the same time. You can't be a human and also kill your ego at the same time. It's just, you got to learn how to work with it. So I've learned how to embrace it and embody it, because really the ego is the thing that's developed your personality. So it's very neutral. It's not good or bad. It's just part of being human. So why is this important to know for healing? So we have that kind of basic understanding of what the ego is. You have an ego, I have an ego. It's also in charge of developing our personality. It was the thing that was managing our emotions until we become conscious. When we reclaim responsibility for our emotions, we are now awakening, which is pretty much, if you're still watching this, where you are. But this is the problem. The ego likes to intellectualize everything. It has to understand everything. Everything has to be qualified and quantified. And so if you've ever been in a therapeutic experience with somebody, whether it's a therapist or some other like healing modality, and you know intellectually what's going on, but you still feel mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally unwell, it's because you're still in your ego. This is where we need to get very clear on the difference between intellectual awareness of the issue and emotional awareness of the issue. You have to become conscious of your ego in order to begin your healing journey. You have to be like, oh shit, that's probably my ego doing that. And also we have to remember that the ego is going to try to intellectualize our emotions, which is absolutely not going to help you heal. This is important to know while picking the person that's going to help guide you through your healing journey. You are not going to be able to heal through an intellectual awareness. This is where people are like, I know what I'm doing, but I can't get out of my own way. It's because you're not emotionally aware. You're intellectually aware. In other words, your ego is like, I understand I have emotions. Let's talk about them. But never actually fucking feel them. You're never going to heal if that's the case. And if you're working with a practitioner that's not emotionally aware, they're going to try to give you directions to places they've never been. Again, you're never going to heal. You have to have an emotionally aware practitioner to help you navigate healing. And this is where the rubber meets the road, is that this is really difficult because the ego has to know everything. I've run into this even in the comments here where people have said to me, what's the first step in healing? And I say, feel your shit. And then somebody will jump in, typically with some sort of like a bunch of letters after their name or some sort of integration specialist qualification. And they'll be like, well, according to my teachings, you're supposed to be able to assign language to these things. I'm like, listen, Brooke, fuck off. Like, no offense, but you're going to hurt yourself. You can't think your way through healing. You have to actually sit with the emotions. Because if you don't do that, your ego will do it. Because that's its fucking job. Especially if it's uncomfortable. In order to feel better, we have to get better at feeling. And in order to get better at feeling, we have to understand that our ego has been responsible for managing our emotions until we decide we want to become emotionally aware, which means you're going to have to get good at something that you're not good at. It's very hard to become emotionally aware, but you can do it right now. Like, seriously, if you can think of a trigger in your life, think of any trigger, take a minute, think about it. Notice how your brain is going a mile a minute about who did it, why they're a fucking asshole, and what story you have to go along with it. And if you can just shut the fuck up, get out of your actual head and into your body instead and tell me what it actually felt like rather than what your story about it was, you're going to heal 500% faster than somebody that sits in a therapist's office and bitches about the same thing 7,000 times because they're trying to heal intellectually through the ego, which is absolutely not equipped to help you heal. It's keeping you alive, which is pretty awesome. It's just not going to help you heal. You've got to give your ego a job. You say to your ego, listen, I understand your story. I'm going to need you to shut the fuck up. And I'm going to need you to use your neurons to find out language to assign to what I'm feeling. And you're going to actually have to sit in that discomfort. In other words, we're going to teach you how to use your ego. How do you make that practical right now? First of all, thank your ego because it's why you're still here. Secondly, give your ego a job. Take a deep breath, identify a trigger, and give your ego the task of assigning language to what the emotion under the trigger feels like. It's awesome. Isn't this fun? I love you guys so much. Let's keep going. Let's bring you to the best life ever. I can't tell you how grateful I am for you. And I love you so much.